Hi, and welcome to the Star Season Lightworkers Collective. My name is Crystal, and unfortunately, I have a bit of a cold, but I'm trying my best. But I wanted to say thank you to everybody for coming in tonight. Tonight we have our most esteemed guest, Miss Maurene Morgan, who has been with us before, and she was the former state director for MUFON, but she's so much more than that. And tonight she'll be talking to us about her travels in the South Pacific and the certain statues in the South Pacific which may have a connection to ET visitation here on Earth. So without further ado, Miss Maurene Morgan, how are you doing today?
I am so excited about doing this because this is one of my favorite topics. And I think maybe, again, a little more background in that I was the Washington Mutual UFO Network MUFON state director for 6 years and state section director and all that before that. I was also on MUFON's experiencer research team, so that not only was I directing a team of UFO investigators, I also spoke personally to hundreds of experiencers on every possible topic. So if anybody wants to talk to me at any point about either UFO investigations or experiencers, I'm open to that. But to give a little bit of background, many years ago, I should say, was it 40 years ago? Oh my goodness. 50 years ago. 50
Wow.
years ago.
It's been a while.
Actually, I first started traveling. It actually started 50 years ago when I went traveling, left college, dropped out of college, and went backpacking across Europe and ended up in the Canary Islands off the west coast of Africa, getting a position crewing on a square rigger to the West Indies. Ended up meeting somebody who then we sailed for many years on a big schooner that he had. And then later, the two of us sailed our 40-foot sailboat around the world.
Wow.
And during that time, while we were cruising in the South Pacific, in fact, it might make a certain amount of sense to talk while the slides are up. But anyway, I had the extraordinary opportunity to see these islands that no one ever goes to. They're off the beaten path. In fact, the Marquesas Islands are noted for being the most isolated, the most remote inhabited island group on Earth. And there's some of the most extraordinary statues and structures in the Marquesas that no one seems to be paying much attention to. So it's an current obsession of mine to figure out now what they are, why they're so anomalous, who may be behind them. So at any point that Crystal wants to start the slideshow, I'm ready to go.
Okay, well, no problem. That's great, and thank you so much for all the background. There was a lot there. You have so much to offer us, so I mean, it's good that you gave us that background. Thank you. So whenever you're ready, you can start you can share your slides with us, and we can.
Hang on, me on my side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Slide share. I thought we were already up.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay. You can share your screen with us. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Now. Your screen sharing. Where is it?
Oh, we can see it. We can see your,
Okay.
we can see your slides.
So how does it get big?
Let me just see here, full screen. It's good. Yeah, it's good. Here we are. We're good.
Okay, so it's good on your end and it's good for your attendees?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, this is an example of the most, this is like a title slide. I'll get into these later, but it gives you some idea of the extraordinarily anomalous nature of some of these statues that are down there. And in this particular case, these distinctly froggy or fish beings, oarsmen, like there's 7 of them rowing what appears to be a boat, but they are so incredibly anomalous. And whenever I ask any of the professionals, well, what do they mean? Where did they come from? I get like blank stares. So this is just to give you some idea of just how anomalous these statues are. Okay.
Okay, great.
Now, next, I need to go to I'm not sure how to get to keep moving this.
Yeah, maybe the forward arrow, the forward arrow. Maybe
Well,
that'll.
I don't have a forward arrow. All I have is this little screen, and it says your screen sharing, and there's a little arrow at the bottom.
Okay, on your keyboard you should have some front arrows. The four arrows.
Okay, I see. Okay,
Yeah.
doing it that way.
Just a forward arrow there.
Yeah, okay. It should, hang on. I got, forward.
On your keyboard.
Thing is, okay, hang on. Thing is,
Or maybe the press enter on your keyboard.
okay, here's, I am, okay, hang on.
Yeah.
We'll get this figured out.
Yeah.
Enter. Hang on here. We're having an issue here. And I'm not sure.
How about the space bar?
There it goes. Okay,
there
the
you
space
go.
bar. I actually have two different computers here and two different screens, and I've got mice, and my mouse is plugged into one, and not the. Anyway, so the space bar works. So the first thing I need to do is make sure that everybody understands that the images I'm going to show do not belong to me. Any of the photos that we took back in the early 1980s have been lost in time and space. So until I can return myself to the South Pacific, the images are they're fair use for educational purposes. I just want to make sure everybody understands these are not my images.
We understand. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay.
So this is Finished Air 4, the 40-foot sailboat that my partner and I sailed around the world. And in the backdrop, you have Moorea, which is like the sister island of Tahiti. So we basically sailed from like the late 1970s through about mid 1980s.
Okay.
And there were, for the most part, just the two of us.
How romantic.
Well, believe me, you want to know something? You get so tired of seeing one person, particularly if you're on a long passage, by the time you get to shore, that other person is the last person you want to see.
Okay. Well, at least we tried. We tried to live romantically.
It's one of the things. There's aspects of sailing that's not so romantic, and it's being with one person for 2 or 3 and sometimes 4 weeks.
I see.
Okay. So anyway, with this slide, and again, it gives you some impression of ocean sailing. And we sailed from basically from left New York City, went through the Caribbean, through the Panama Canal, and the first dot you see is the Galapagos, and then the Marquesas, and on to the Marquesas. And during it must have been about a 30-day sail from the Galapagos to the Marquesas. I read and reread Thor Heyerdahl's book Fatuhiva, which was back in the early 1980s, was one of the few books that were even out there about the islands in the South Pacific. Okay. And he talked about specifically what enchanted me, that he talked about these extraordinary statues that were in the Marquesas. And when we got there, and the map over to the right-hand side gives you some idea of the configuration of the 9 islands that make up the Marquesas. And the first island that we stopped at was Hiva Oa, and it's anyway, to give you some idea of what Hiva Oa looks like. We would have been anchored down there in the harbor, and it's very, very mountainous, and there's I should first say that this is the island where Paul Gauguin spent the last 3 years of his life painting some of his most important paintings. Okay. So this is basically Paul Gauguin's island. Okay. So anyway, so the island, the statues that were so important to Thor Heyerdahl were the ones that you're seeing off to the right. But to get to these statues, you had to go from where the harbor is. See, little Atuana. over across Razorback Mountains. You can see these Razorback Mountains. Well, we had to hire a driver to drive us across these Razorback Mountains over to the other side of the island to get to this particular valley that had this sacred site called Puamau, of which these are a couple of the statues that are located there. And this Paki is the largest statue outside of Easter Island.
Okay.
And there's a number of others right in that vicinity, but he is and one of the interesting things that Thor Heyerdahl brought up was that it wasn't quarried there. It was quarried down the mountain. Or up the mountain. How did they get it from that? I mean, it has to weigh at least a couple of 1,000 pounds. How did they get it going down like Goat Pass from up in the mountains down to where it was situated? And there's a number of very important platforms that are really quite old in the Marquesas as well. So anyway, the statue you're seeing in the top left was the statue that literally changed Thor Heyerdahl's life, because he saw that, and what he saw was a flying man on a pedestal, and he knew that there were. First of all, I'll just say this is the statue that he was most impressed with and changed his life, because he knew there were others similar to it in Ecuador and Colombia. And this is the one on the right is a recent reproduction, but you can get a pretty good idea of the goggle eyes, what looks like a helmet, and what also appears to be gloves, a belt, and boots. Well, what's interesting, if you look at the bottom right picture of that animal, that even though this person, this image, is clearly of a flying person, the official tourist information has this a woman giving birth with a dog, even though that is clearly a llama.
That's a
and
llama.
And you see this is all throughout. You'll see this all throughout the Marquesas. It's like it's not. You can't go there. You know, it's not acceptable to have flying statues in the Marquesas. So they call it a woman giving birth with a dog.
But why would a woman do that, though? I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
That's just it. They would. This is clearly somebody who is flying.
Yeah.
Yes, but you can't have somebody flying because they didn't do, the Polynesians did not do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, the two pictures at the bottom right are examples of where else in the world you find these goggle eyes with the slits.
Yeah.
And this is something that you can see up at the upper right. You can see almost exact duplicates. And so there had to be cross-pollination between the Japanese, the ancient Japanese, and the Marquesas, because I don't think anybody would just automatically start using that motif without some kind of connection. And I've asked local archaeologists about this, and their response was, well, you see them everywhere. Well, why do you see them everywhere?
Well, that's the thing.
Well, that's just because you can't go there. You know, technically there is no connection between the Japanese and the Marquesas. But
yet,
well, I'm sure that's going to be changing.
Yeah.
So, and then again, these are some of these. These are not in the Marquesas, but it is the one at the top left that again changed Thor Heyerdahl's life. In fact, the two on the top, because he said there's just no way you're going to have flying people in the Marquesas without their having traveled to Ecuador and Colombia.
Exactly.
And the problem is that there is this dogma of there was no transoceanic travel. But clearly there had to be. And the ones at the bottom are just more examples of some of these flying creatures, like the one in Guatemala, which is clearly a man flying, flying a turtle, a flying object. And the others are from the Dominican Republic. And one of the things that I found was the remarkable similarities in the motifs between the Taino culture in the Dominican Republic and the Marquesas. There had to be some kind of cross-pollination between the two, but it's not acknowledged.
No, absolutely.
Now, this is one of my favorites. And again, this is still in Hiva-Oa. I mean, this is. I look at it and I see a gentleman with a helmet. He's got spectacles and he's got a goatee. Well, technically, according to the tourist material, this is the Queen of Uatkua.
Oh boy.
I mean, this is no more. Again, this confusion that you can't have somebody who's got a helmet, spectacles, and a goatee, and then again you begin to see that ubiquitous motif of the hands at the navel. That goes throughout.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's and the one at the far right is to show these really extraordinarily weird ears that again you see all throughout the Marquesas, and you see them in the Japanese sculptures and in the ones from the Taino culture in the Dominican Republic. But this guy I find is so remarkable because clearly he's got a helmet, spectacles, and a goatee. Totally out of place. Out of place.
Yeah, and I'm kind of wondering about this goatee business because I'm wondering if maybe, and instead of being a goatee, could it possibly be some sort of like speaking apparatus, but so they're maybe drawn as a goatee? I don't know.
It's
from a helmet.
know.
From a helmet.
That's right. It indicates that it's not a woman.
No,
I mean,
it's not. No. That's
woman.
clear. No, there's no argument there. I mean, what kind of woman?
And now this is a very interesting. I have spent countless hours trying to find any kind of cross that's anything like this. It's sort of like dismissed as the vulva stone, but it's got the square on the right hand side and the outstretched wing on the other side, plus these little indentions on the bottom. It is like it is unique in the world. I can find everything I'm going to show you is unique in the world. And again, I have gone everywhere trying to find something that even remotely looks like this and cannot.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then now we're on to, again, these three are kind of cool. The top left, is a motif that is absolutely not Polynesian. And it's very sophisticated, and it's something that you see, in the, particularly like in the Mediterranean, in Sumeria. It's just not Polynesian, and yet it's just there. And the two on the bottom are really cool because if you look at the one on the left first, first of all, you see these two anomalous creatures, and you see this like paddleboard with this script. And again, I have spent countless hours trying to find a script that even remotely looks similar to that script. But what's interesting is the creature, the person, I'll say the person in the back of the right one is clearly reptilian, a reptilian woman. You look at her face, how it comes out. Yeah. It's a reptilian woman. The one on the left, they've removed her.
Really?
So, yeah, you have to wonder if it was, it's, again, I think she was too anomalous for them to leave it there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, clearly that is a reptilian woman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can see from her bust that she was definitely.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Definitely a woman, but you can also see from the extended snout. Now, there you're beginning to see here some of these are, you're going to be seeing statues, and to me, it's more. I began to see these as being. The Polaroid snapshots made by a people who use stone the way we use film. But one of the things you're going to start seeing is the adoration of the children, pregnant women, and the way the children are absolutely beloved. And you can see, in the one on the left, you can see how it looks like the baby is talking to the mother. Yeah. And you can see. And again, the image at the top, you can see the similarities between the ears from the Dominican Republic and the strange ears that you see here in the Marquesas. They're only 6,000 miles apart. Or is it, anyway, thousands, at least 6,000 miles apart in two different oceans. And then the ones on the far right are the same, the front and the back, but it's the mother. It is the mother protecting the child, embracing the child, the child. It's so loving.
Yeah, it is quite interesting. But that is true. I mean, it's interesting though.
That's right. And these are again family units. And what's really kind of cool about the one on the upper left is it actually looks like Papa with two kids.
Yeah.
But the eyes are different from the two kids.
Yeah.
But then if you look closely, you can see there's a little guy poking out between the legs. It's like he's horsing around and poking out between the legs of his two brothers.
Okay. Yeah. At the bottom there. Yeah. But he has big eyes though. He has like big, sort of goggly eyes. Yeah.
And again, wholly different eyes. It's almost like they have different species within the same family units. The one in the middle gives you some. It appears to be probably a woman holding a child.
Okay.
You should be able to make out the child. This is how most of these statues looked originally. That gives you some idea of their age. Most of them have been cleaned, and I think it's good that they've been cleaned. Except it also eliminates one of the ways in which you can age these statues. In that all lichen, they're covered with lichen, and all different species of lichen have different growing patterns. So you can actually determine the age of an object by a particular the size of a particular lichen. Some of them might take 1,000 years to grow an inch. Others might grow an inch in a day, whatever. So you can get a better anyway. So I am concerned by the cleaning of these statues if they aren't basically removing one of the ways to age them.
They're doing it for the tourists, though. They're obviously doing it for the tourists to sort of make,
We'll get into that.
Okay.
And the one on the upper right, if you look carefully at the two kids, the child on the little boy, you can see distinctly little boy. They're circumcised. That he looks just like Dad. The one on the left, the child on the left, has a piggy face. Yeah. And a totally different shape of the face. As though, again, they had different looks within the same family units. And the ones at the bottom, the two on the bottom left are again showing this endearing, these mother and child motifs that, again, you don't see anything like this anywhere in the world. The lady on the far right, the bottom far right, was the only female that I saw anywhere that did not either have a child or was not pregnant. And you'll see the pregnant ladies coming out shortly.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I mean, it's so far I'm being reminded in a way, especially with some of the statues that you're showing here, is that I'm being reminded of, I guess, Easter Island,
no, these are totally different from Easter Island for the most part.
But I mean, with their hands, on their navel, and they're sort of just standing there. You know what I mean?
What I have just realized, as I'm beginning to study the ancient goddesses, this goes back to the ancient goddesses.
Okay.
I had always thought, because I first began to see those with those Sumerian statues. No, this goes way back before that to the ladies.
Okay.
So anyway, you start off. These are basically family units. And again, it's really endearing to show just how close the family units were with whatever culture it was that produced these. And also I find it interesting that you say the father, it looks like a father on the bottom left, and the father with the kids on the bottom right have an entirely different shaped head, and it's like they're wearing a helmet, and they have square ears. And if you look at the dad in the middle bottom, and again, it almost looks like he has an appliance on his ear.
Okay.
It almost looks like he's got a little antenna on the ear.
Okay. Yeah.
It definitely does not look like an ear.
No.
So yeah, but these again are indications of this incredible. The incredible family units here.
Yeah, I have an interesting comment here from Darius Klein, and he says the Al Ubaid lizard men statues are quite wonderful. I don't know if you know about that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, believe me, when I'm going to be doing a presentation on the ancient goddesses, in which the lizard people, the reptoids, will play a big part of it. So that sort of comes in here, and it sort of doesn't.
Okay, but so Darius, you should join us then when we do that presentation.
Yeah. Now this one is really kind of cool in that the image on the left was and again, one of the problems I have is that there are so few images out there. It's like there's one image of each thing. There should be. You'd think there would be 20 or 30 or 40. I mean, the Google images. they would be all over the place, but they're not. So there's only one image of something like this. I would like to have it from like in every time of day, different filters, different lights, different from every possible angle.
Yeah.
But I don't have that. So I was absolutely dumbfounded when I came across the same statue with a green filter that brought out the child in the middle. This is actually the little girl in the middle.
Okay.
She's wearing a dress and with collar, belt, sleeves, and this priestly, or I should say chiefly headdress with a feather.
Yeah, I see that. Okay.
And again, she is pretty much the only truly human figure of all the figures that you're going to see today.
Okay.
And you have to think, where did she come into this? And again, it's just the whole feather. It's like it is so totally anomalous.
But just to sort of on a side note here, a lot of universities also just like the mainstream put a blackout on this kind of information. Don't forget, they don't want to study it. And so they put a blackout on it. For example, you hear things about how in ancient Egypt they will block off certain, structures or certain, parts of the, and then they do that because they don't want that information to get out here. So it doesn't surprise me. Probably images that you're finding are people's own images. They're not even like scholarly images.
That's right. I mean? That's right. So until I can get down there and get my own, again, from every angle, every filter, every whatever, I am stuck with what I have available.
Yeah.
And I think and again, this should strike you as being, these are not tikis. These are called, again, in the tourist information, everything you're seeing are called tikis, but they're not. A tiki is like a god, a depiction of a god or an important person. Kids tumbling in a yard, this is like, again, a Polaroid snapshot of kids playing in the yard, except in stone. So, so that whole term, tiki throws it completely off. These are not depictions of gods or important people. They are kids playing in a playground.
Okay. I can see that, yeah.
And here you have some of the guys.
Okay. Oh, for sure.
And the one on the far left is a reproduction from one that was clearly probably degraded. They've moved the original into a safe place because they're now beginning to again reproduce some of the notable statues, and they don't get they're not weathered. They don't have people touching them, but you'll notice very clearly that these guys are circumcised. And I keep thinking, well, when did that come about? They're all circumcised, and not only that, but they're weird.
Yeah, well,
the guy in the middle, and look at he's got kind of a cone head. And the guy, because I've only got the one image to the far right, it's kind of hard to see what his head looks like. But the one in the middle, it's like, and you'll see more of these guys later. But it's almost like it's another species, very different from the one on the left. And of course, it's really cute that somebody put a bowl down there to
cough. Yeah, there you go.
Now you're getting into something. You will not see anywhere on earth the pregnant ladies, and the most extraordinary thing about the pregnant ladies is that you start looking, say, at the one in the top middle. Yeah, it took me the longest time to figure out what I was seeing, and again, you can see that at one time it was covered with the lichen, which they have cleared off, and it's like it's just sitting in somebody's yard. But anyway, you can see that she is so close to giving birth that the child is pressing up against the skin of her belly, and she's got an open vulva. She is ready to give birth.
Wow. And the baby looks quite interesting too, if you notice that.
Well, the baby looks exactly like mom.
But it doesn't look human.
And then I put in the Venus of Gribaldi, which is 22,000 years old, which gives you some example of how far back you have to go in order to get depictions of women who are pregnant. And also you will note her head. She has a reptilian head. Many of the ancient goddess figures have reptilian features. Like the gentleman was saying about the Ubad statues or figurines from the Sumeria area. Yeah, she distinctly has a reptilian head. So the rest of them, the one on the lower left is really interesting because this poor lady is clearly deformed.
Okay.
Look at, it's like her head has been melted.
Okay.
And one eye is normal, and the other eye, it's like somehow she has this deformity that's falling over her face. Her eye is somehow distorted, but still she's about to give birth. So I mean, just to depict a woman who, again, who's malformed, has got to be the only one on Earth.
That's kind of interesting.
Well, and you can see the others, again, these are all ladies who are just, on the very edge of giving birth. And again, this is stuff you see nowhere else on Earth.
That's interesting. I wonder why, obviously the idea of a family and birth.
Because it does. Oh, well, I think when the goddesses went by the wayside with the boys, with the patriarchs, they basically erased. It's forgotten. The battles are what's important. The rulers, the emperors, not women who are giving birth. And this is the island of Fatuhiva, the island, one of the islands that Thor Heyerdahl wrote about, to give you some idea what these islands look like.
Okay.
And if you look down at the bottom, you see the little boats down there in the harbor. Well, our boat was down there at one time.
Wow. Okay.
And again, it's very, very rugged, absolutely spectacular islands. They're all eroded, basically eroded mountaintops, volcanoes. Now here, this is one of the most and again, another one of a kind on Earth that no one is paying attention to. This is a lady on Fatuhiva. Again, we did not see her because, many of these statues have been moved from where they originally were and which often were inaccessible to us, down to the harbor sides. So we never saw her. But if you look closely, you will see that she is throwing up with what appears to be morning sickness. And it has to be clearly the only statue of a woman, in the world, who's pregnant with morning sickness. And again, this is the island of Nukahiva. And again, these islands are absolutely stunningly spectacular.
I'm sure the pictures don't do justice to the beauty.
Oh, the pictures do not do justice. We were, I said again, but one time we were anchored in the harbor that you see in the upper left-hand slide. I swam in the pool at the bottom of that waterfall. But yeah, the islands are extremely rugged, and again, they're remnants of ancient volcanoes.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
Well, yeah, they're almost like unique in the world in just their topography. Okay, now this guy, you tell me what you see here. And again, all the ones that you're going to see, for the most part, have been moved from inaccessible places. We did not see any of these because we could not access them. When we were in the South Pacific in the early 1980s, it was the old South Pacific.
Okay.
There were the only transportation was a tramp steamer that came from Tahiti to the Marquesas once every 6 weeks. There were no roads. There were no docks. There were no airports. There was literally no way we could even get to most of these places, even if we knew that they were there. And so little had been written about them, we didn't even know they were there to go look at them.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a really cool time to be in the South Pacific because it was the old South Pacific, but at the same time, it made things logistically difficult.
Okay.
So anyway, all of these, you can see this guy has been moved from, and one of the reasons why I need to go down there is because I don't know where they originally were, where they were in conjunction with other statues. Now they've been moved down to the dock sides. But you look at this guy, and I swear, first of all, the one on the right is the face at the top of the one on the left. And to me, first of all, he looks like he has a hoof above and beyond having an erection.
Yeah.
But it almost looks like, and he's got 6 fingers, and it looks
but that's now hold on there. 6 fingers. Now, where have we heard, the interesting thing about that before?
Oh, that would be
6 fingers. Okay.
A lot
because,
of the aliens. Yeah, but it almost, to me, it looks like he's emerging out of a portal.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even and that round thing you see on the side of on the left one is his ear,
Okay.
because his head is at the top of the right side.
Okay.
But this is just truly, and again, these are the only two images. I mean, I would love to have it from the top, the side. I mean, from
Yeah,
every
well, you got to
angle.
get down there, right? My God.
Well, believe me, I'm heading that way. Even even though my best friend, the shaman, told me not to go down there.
Really? Okay. Well.
Yeah, she said. Yeah. Anyway, I had some flight health issues in the recent past. So anyway, this is just one of the most extraordinary statues. That, again, I don't even know how to describe it.
Well, it is kind of interesting that I guess it's just a he for sure there, because
Clearly, it's a he, and
definitely,
and he's circumcised,
and he's popping out there,
and he has a hoof.
Yeah,
and again, he doesn't have a foot; he has a hoof.
He has a hoof,
so
and
it seems to be a hermaphrodite of some kind.
I'm not really sure why he's popping through this.
Well, again, who knows? And again, the closest thing I can come up with is he's emerging out of a portal.
Yeah, and it's just kind of strange. It's very strange what he's trying to do there. Very odd.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, on with the show. Now, these are really interesting because the one on the left is the round sculpture at the bottom. And again, it was someplace in the back and beyond, because we never saw that. Nor did we see the one on the top. But they've been moved down to the harbor side. And the one at the top has been like cemented to the sculpture at the bottom. It's like the one at the top is probably the closest thing to the Easter Island statues. In fact, I should note that there is evidence that the Marquesans were at Easter Island before the Easter Islanders were.
Okay.
So they may have had some input into the whole Easter Island statues to start with.
Okay.
But anyway, what's really interesting about this is like they've stuck this incongruent head on the top onto this round sculpture at the bottom, which is almost identical to these. Go over to the Easter Island at the bottom, and you see it's almost identical to this round sculpture in Easter Island, and on the backs the same bird with the big beaks, and also on the backs of the Easter Island moai.
Yeah.
But these are also almost identical to Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, which has been dated to almost 12,000 years old.
Well, you know,
so it's like
it's just
I'm seeing the same images here, and again, they're all sort of. It's like ho hum. There's no connection, no nothing. You know,
well, you know what it is, though? It's because it means that we have to rewrite and we have to re-examine, Earth.
Believe me, it requires
because even something like
rewriting history.
Yeah, because even something like
I thought it
Göbekli
was
Tepe.
remarkable that the round sculpture in the Marquesas is virtually identical to the round one on Easter Island, let alone the other two.
Yeah.
Now, these are incredible. And again, this is probably the only chief. He's clearly, the one on the left is clearly a chief. He's got the chief. You can see at the very bottom on the right, this was an image that it was a drawing made by one of Captain Cook's artists.
Okay.
And you can see that it looks as though they have copied the old medallion on the head of this chief. And he has his chiefly staff cradling what looks like an infant girl. I mean, it's an infant, like a proud papa. He isn't a warrior holding up a head. He's showing off his infant daughter. She's got a little bra on.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
And the one in the middle is it appears to be almost like the same chief, only this time he's cradling what looks like a baby pig.
Well, I guess, it likes animals.
Yeah,
but,
and again, where do you see that? And the one on the far right is I think it's the same one that you see on the far left before it was cleaned.
Yeah.
With all the lichen. And it also gives you a very good idea of the great age of these. So, yeah, so I have, even though they have, the cultural authorities in French Polynesia, for the one hand, we could at least see what they are. But on the other hand, I just wonder how much they're, again, removing datability.
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely. And I mean, because, it's kind of like you've heard these archaeologists. Forget this one woman archaeologist who she found these, I think these cups or bowls that were like way, way, way older than, man was supposed to be around. And she lost all her funding because she was trying to, so stuff like that. So if you have the lichen and all that kind of stuff and you're able to date it, then that changes everything. So there's no surprise.
As an independent researcher, I can do anything because I don't have any. I don't have tenure to lose. I am free to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, I'm in a much better position to research all of these than a credentialed archaeologist or anthropologist.
But there's so many archaeologists that have come and gone and said, look, I wanted to present this information, but I was told not to by the university. So there's a lot of information that's just sort of shuttled away and thrown in a cupboard somewhere. Yeah.
Now these are just kind of a hodgepodge. If it looks like I'm looking away, it's because I have a 32-inch monitor over here, so my eyes tend to go over there. But the one on the far left, top, certainly appears to be a fish being. The one in the middle is clearly full bearded with a mustache, whereas the Polynesians have light hair.
Yeah.
They have like wispy little, like goatee. Their beard. They have very light facial hair, and clearly whoever this is has a heavy beard and a mustache. And the one on the far left, far right, is just like a gargantuan. It's like just weird. The little guy in the middle appears to be an anteater, and believe me, there are no anteaters in the Marquesas.
But that looks more like a helmet, no? Like sort of like a hazmat type of helmet where you have like the helmet and then you have this sort of thing at the front for breathing.
If it's not hazmat, it's an anteater. So take your pick.
Yeah.
And the one on the far left on the bottom is this great big pestle. For mortar and pestle, and God, who knows what the significance of it is.
Yeah. But getting back to the man at the top here who's bearded, I know that, I can't remember, it's the Mayan who talked about how the people that taught them came from the sea and that they were light-skinned, bearded people.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
and it was sort of like, well, wait a minute, because people from the area did not have beards. And they weren't light-skinned, and yet this guy looks like a light-skinned, bearded person from the seas who came to teach. And some people are saying that maybe these people are from Atlantis. After Atlantis sank, they went to different parts of the world.
I'm kind of going with Lemuria, but we'll go into that later.
Okay.
Now here is just a selection of giving you some idea. When we were there in the early 1980s, no effort had been made to restore anything. We'd go out for a walk in the countryside and just see these things lying there. And it also gives you some idea of, again, the great age. Just the one on the far right bottom. Clearly this is heavily eroded. So we're being told that these are like 800 years old, and I'm thinking if these are 800 years old, those basaltic mountains would not be there. Exactly. They would have eroded away. So clearly these must be much older than that. So anyway, these I just put in to give you some idea of just again what we were seeing as we would walk around, and they were just lying around anywhere.
Wow.
Now here again, you start getting into what the hell am I looking at? These guys are scary. What in the hell are they? They're certainly, and again, they're totally different from the round-headed guys, that look like with the goggle eyes and what look like almost helmets. What in the hell are these? You look at the little guy in the middle, and he looks like one of the little froggy guys that you're going to see later as one of the rowers. But every single one of these are different. It's like they're almost like they're a different species. But you begin to see the cone heads coming in. Where in the hell do you get cone heads? But the guy, that guy on the left, if I saw him on a dark street at night, I would run.
Well, I would think so. But on the total left though, is not a woman cupping her breasts? Is she pregnant?
Well, it's hard to know. It could very well be a woman, but since these are the only photographs I have available, I have to go with, I don't know. Okay. But I hadn't even thought about her possibly being pregnant.
Yeah, and her belly sticking out.
And again, she would look different from any of the other pregnant ladies that we've seen, or any of the mothers that we've seen. But these guys, the ones on the right, all look like guys.
Okay. Yeah. Well, they're not cupping their breasts.
Okay,
Yeah.
now this is probably, I mean, you would think that any archaeologist, anthropologist, historian, when they saw this, I mean, they would drop to their feet. I mean, literally, and kiss the ground as having found the Holy Grail. And believe me, it took me probably 10 years to find an image of the pool house on the right where there was a clear image of the top. They were all, it was like they were all almost like washed out. So it almost looked like waves or something on the top.
Okay.
So finally, I found this photo embedded in a tour company's website of some of the sites. And again, it was boom, boom, boom. And sometimes I would find, in order to find some of these pictures, I'd have to go into somebody's site and into somebody's site and in somebody's site in order to find them. So when I found this image of the pole house with a clear view of on top, I mean, again, I kissed the ground to thank the goddesses. But the incredible thing about this particular I don't know, carving, is that according to Marques's legend, Atia, creator god and giver of light, popped up out of chaos, the deluge, and one day and married Atua, built this pole house for her and spawned the first human.
Well, that sounds kind of interesting because you do see the boat there, and I was actually sort of thinking.
Well, hang on, I have a blow up of the one on top,
Yeah.
so just ignore that for right now. But here you see on the top left, you see what is on the left side of the pole house, which is Atea building the house, and on the bottom left, you see the queen with her entourage that's on the far right. So anyway, then you start thinking about spawn the first humans. What are all those pregnant ladies about?
Exactly.
You know, what are the ladies with their children at their breast? Are they tied in with this?
But it sounds kind of interesting though, because you do hear a lot about how the deluge people, got into a boat. And then, let's not forget the Noah's Ark and all that jazz. And then, people were probably in this boat and then turned around and came off this boat, and these were like the first humans. That's a very, very common story throughout the world, no?
It is global.
Yeah.
These are the children that are in that pool house. And again, I'm thinking these people had sticks and stones that they were carving with. Every child is different. I mean, they're horsing around. It's like they're poking each other. It's like every single one. This to me is like a portrait of a bunch of kids in a classroom, a bunch of little boys horsing around and poking each other and playing with each other. It's extraordinary. And again, these are the first humans that Atea and his wife spawned that are in that pole house. Now we get to the roof. Want to brace yourself?
Okay. Oh.
Here you look at this. There is nothing on earth like this. And
Wow.
and again, Wikipedia. What was really interesting is that I first of all, I was looking up beard. When I found this, I was looking up, that's when I started looking up, well, just how big a beard do Polynesians have? And I found out, well, no, they don't have.
They don't really have, not like that though.
They don't really have beards. So despite the popularity of the rejected hypothesis, like Thor Heyerdahl's belief that Polynesians are descendants of bearded white men who sailed on primitive craft from South America, Polynesians are believed to have originated in Melanesia. Well, these are clearly bearded white men, and they're rowing. You can see the guy is rowing. And not only that, but you look at it, and you can see that the big guy to the right, does he have some kind of helmet on? And this is some kind of, and he's got those same square ears that you saw earlier in some of those statues where they almost like the helmeted heads and then the really square, almost like they had appliances to their ears.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's clearly has a square ear, fully bearded, and just, and again, it's almost like he's got a helmet on.
He does.
With plaque on it, somehow this medallion or something.
Yeah. And then like next to it, but that's
and then he's clearly rowing.
Yeah.
Which again, this all completely matches Thor Heyerdahl, who is reviled. I mean, he is like, you rub your feet, clean your dog shit off of Thor Heyerdahl. because these are exactly the things that he talked about.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then you
turning
see-
in his grave. Yeah.
yeah, that's believe me, Thor. I would love to go to his museum. But then you see the little guy in the middle that looks like a hermaphrodite. He looks like a Polynesian, but he's going to get the weird eye and the weird ear. But he definitely has Polynesian features. And then of course you see the guy to the far left, which has a huge beard, like the
Yeah,
guy on
another
the far
bearded guy. Another bearded guy.
fully
Yeah.
bearded. And you have to think that what in the hell is behind?
But can I just...
Somebody, and again, until I can, and this is the only photograph like this that I have found. People may have them in their own collections, but on Google Images, Pinterest, anywhere, this is the only one I found that even remotely shows the beings on the top of this pole house with any kind of clarity. So I have no idea that big bushy thing is in the back. Is that somebody's hair?
Can I just sort of throw a little sort of like
sure. I'm open for all ideas.
Yeah, ranch in the works there. Ranch. Okay, so this so at the beginning here, the guy with the helmet, the medallion, and all that kind of stuff. It says it looks like he's rowing, but actually, when I look at his hands, it looks like he's holding on to controls of something. Like somebody says like a ski-doo.
That
and it looks like he's holding a sea-doo, and he's sort of like instead of a ski-doo, a sea-doo, and he's sort of just holding these controls and driving this boat around. I don't know. He's not rowing. He's holding onto some controls there.
Until I can get down there and get my own photograph. It really good quality from every direction, every filter, every light, top, bottom, whatever. This is the best I can come up with. It appears that he's rowing, but it could be something. It could be, some
it looks like a sea-doo there. It looks like he's holding some controls. Right? He's steering this motorized vehicle and driving people around on this vehicle. That's
it is not. And then what I thought was extraordinary is the very next entry under the Wikipedia one. Game-changing studies suggest first Polynesians voyage all the way east past Japan. The first Polynesians sailed across Oceania at least 3,000 years ago without mingling with the Melanesians already living there. What do they say above? Believed to have. So this is one of the things I kept finding every place I went with conflicting information.
Yeah.
You hear this and you hear this, and
the people just don't want to make sense.
I think it's evidence fighting dogma. So I thought that was really cool, and again. 3,000 years ago, and clearly they were doing transoceanic sailing, navigating, and yet Thor Heyerdahl in the 1950s had to prove to the world that they could do it. Because there's no way that these dumb heathen savages in the South Pacific could be better than the Europeans.
Of course not.
And again, you have to think, even in the 1500s, many of the top intellects in Europe still believed the world was flat.
Yeah.
So anyway, we can't even go there because this is the pole house with the children and the guys on the top. It is again this. I don't understand why every archaeologist, anthropologist, literally doesn't come here and bow to it.
Well,
except it tells the wrong story.
Well, it tells the wrong story, but also they go where the money is. At this point in time, people are really going where the money is.
And you have to go where the money is.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, we have the image of this, and again, the 7 fish or frogs in the boat. And I am tying this in, and I will be tying this in with the 7 sages who sailed around the world, restoring civilization to the survivors after the Great Deluge.
Exactly.
So you find again all of these statues that indicate these were survivors. They were survivors of something. And then you have the one again on the left or on the far right, which again shows the seven rowers in the boat, and again the 7 sages. So
but you can see by their hands. You see, compared to the other photo, the second to last photo you showed us. This photo here, you can actually see the oars that they're holding, both pictures. Whereas the other guy, and that's just my 2 cents, was holding onto controls of a motorized vehicle.
Well,
you know what I mean?
You got something there because there you can clearly see they have oars.
Oars,
on
yeah.
the one on the left, you cannot actually see the oars coming down.
No, but you see them though. The way he's holding his hand, because if we've
I
all
know,
gone
but they
to the
don't
summer
have them
camp.
coming down,
Yeah.
which suggests what maybe or maybe not that they had oars. So, and then this next one again, this is an ark.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it.
Look
It
at the
has
size
no
of that boat.
mast.
Yeah.
It has no sails. This is an ark. And
Yeah.
again, I don't have any idea where this was originally sighted, but it wasn't sighted down by the waterfront, I can tell you. And again, it looks like the on the lower right side, the figure in the back looks like the prow of this ark. And again, with just a strange creature that's just that they literally placed adjacent to it. But yeah, what in the world is an ark doing in the Marquesas, other than these are survivors
Exactly.
from some cataclysm? And I have been working on really researching the whole connection with these statues and the lost civilization of Lemuria. And it is in my opinion, that many of it's like they're so incongruent. There's no reason why they're placed where they are. It's almost like this is a salvage yard or a refuge where what was considered like priceless artifacts were brought there for safekeeping, knowing that the Marquesas are high and mountainous. And I think most of these statues were in high mountainous places, which is why we couldn't see them while we were there. But now they have been brought down and placed by the harbor front so that the tourists that can now get off of the cruise ships can take their walkers over and see these things. So anyway, to me, this is, I mean, just look at it and say, it screams an ark. What in the hell is an ark doing in the Marquesas?
Well, it goes back to that story, because I mean, that whole story, a worldwide story about how there was a deluge and people are coming over.
Absolutely.
So
and then you get to the seven sages and the flood myths in every human culture. Many ancient legends tell us that in bygone ages, a group of seven sages, which you just saw, folks, with extraordinary wisdom and untold powers, visited the earth from the stars. And again, this is the same thing you find in all indigenous knowledge. Accounts for life having come from the stars. That the star people.
Yeah, the star people.
And again, the star ancestors, legends of the star ancestor, all of them, they came from the stars, which would have, which I absolutely believe. And so, with extraordinary wisdom and untold powers, visited the earth from the stars in the form of fishes. What do we see in the boat? Either fishes or frogs, whatever they were.
Yeah.
Or semi-divine teachers of mankind that traveled around the world, passing the knowledge of all sciences and the arts to the people. And again, this it was a time when our planet was closely integrated with our larger cosmic family, a very different area compared to the profane world we live in today. That's right. And I mean, you look at some of these Sumerian fish gods in the middle, and you think, oh my God, what are we seeing in that boat? It's the official story is the official story. And I have read every book. I have a bibliography, probably 5 or 6 pages of every book that's ever been written about the Marquesas and most of the South Pacific, and every scholarly paper. And these statues are barely even mentioned.
Wow.
So, and again, if they are, it's almost in passing, like, isn't this interesting? And then they move on to something else. Oh, yeah. Archaeological digs with trash middens and pottery shards and fish hooks are a big deal. And they could be digging at the feet of these statues and never mention them.
Wow.
Because I know the location of some of these archaeological sites, and literally they're at the feet of those statues, and it's like maybe they don't even see them.
But you know what though?
It's so dogmatic, you can't. I mean, somehow you don't even see them.
But what is it about these fish people, like in the middle picture there with the fish and everything? Because you can see that they have feet, and yet they're wearing almost what looks like a fish costume. Well, I'm not sure what that is.
I think unless somebody got there and actually could maybe look into the boat, whatever, it's hard to know if they have feet. It's just, and again, I am restricted to the images I can glean off of the internet. until I can get down there and get my own images, I have to use, and again, the odd thing is that these are so extraordinary, and yet again, I have spent again countless hours combing every possible site where I could find images for the Marquesas, and this is all. I mean, this is all.
Yeah.
I mean, there should be thousands of them out there, but there isn't. So anyway, I think the goddesses are telling me, oh, and one of the really extraordinary things about those statues too, which you'll never hear in any book by an archaeologist or anthropologist, is that these statues, the Polynesians, and I'm not speaking about those in particular, but there were certain statues in Tahiti that the Tahitians believed were living beings. They saw these statues as literally being live beings, living beings in stone who they could interact with. They would, I mean, you would have frequencies, you would have, they would resonate with you. And so when when a lot of these statues, particularly those in Tahiti, see, the Marquesas were so far out in the back and beyond, they retained most of their statues. Many places like Tahiti and Hawaii lost theirs to private collections and museums. So there is a story about this one particular beloved statue in Tahiti that, again, was somebody got and was going to take it up to the Peabody Museum in Boston. And I mean, the people, they were so distraught because it was one of the only statues that still had the living life force in it. And I think one of the things that as long as we look at all of these statues, all of this whatever this culture was, through the eyes of like this patriarchal, scientific, materialistic way of looking at things, we will never understand what they are, because we have to take ourselves back to the minds of the people who carved them. So, and until we do, it's like they're just artifacts versus something that were like living beings. And there were so many. Oh, I'll get this again. I won't go on up. Now, this to me sums up the whole problem.
Okay.
With present day, say, the credentialed archaeologists, whatever. I got a hold of this book in 2019, thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to be the book that tells me everything. Christina Thompson is she is the editor of the Harvard Review, a retired professor, editor of the Harvard Review. This book has won all of these awards.
Okay. But she's at the head of the Harvard Review, so already which means this is going to come down.
This is the official word. This is the official word. Yeah. The book begins and ends at the feet of those statues in Nuka Haven.
Okay.
She never mentions them.
Yeah.
Never. She goes throughout Polynesia. There are these incredible megaliths, mysterious megaliths, all throughout the South Pacific. She didn't, Tonga, my God, they've got these incredible megaliths in Tonga. There was a step pyramid in Tahiti that the missionaries demanded that the Tahitians raise, because they kept saying, well, but this was before your Bible story. So to take care of that, they demanded that it be raised. There are roads, paved roads that go under the water. There are if anybody's has any background knowledge about Nan Madol, there are things down there that are just absolutely unexplainable, and she never touches them. Yeah, it's like it's the official story. When she talks about New Zealand, she talks about the Maori, but she never bothers to interview the indigenous people who were there when the Maoris arrived, who are still extant. The problem is, their story is, they're from Easter Island. They used to go back and forth regularly from Easter Island. So because it doesn't fit in with the story, she cut them out. Yeah. So she begins and ends New Zealand with the Maoris. Yep. But this is the story. This is the story throughout the South. Oh, and then there's one of the things that I have going for me, where I could, in a lot of ways, I can see through the lies. Is that I have sailed a small boat, 40-foot sailboat.
That's not that small.
40. It's about as big as your bathroom. our living space. Anyway, from Panama to Australia. Okay. And so I can tell you that you cannot sail. The official story, if you look at all the settlement patterns, they all come from the west, from like Micronesia, and they came and settled going west, going to Samoa, going to Fiji, going to Tonga, going to Tahiti, blah, blah, blah. Well, I can tell you that's not possible. Okay. Because the strong currents and winds, trade winds, blow from east to west. I could take a wicker basket, stick it on a stick on a log, and sail from any point in South America going west. Mm-hmm. You try to sail from the west east, and you'll end up in Japan. And until motorized vehicles, vessels, there were no boats going from the east or from the west to the east. And yet that is the dogma. There it is. And I still see it every day. So there's this dogma that is like written in stone. And even though as a sailor, we had a go fast racing hull, we couldn't sail it. And can you imagine those great lumbering catamarans, that were multi-story high, that had woven sails made out of woven, grasses and stuff. There's no way they could sail those boats against the wind, against mm-hmm. the current, going to the east. Mm-hmm. So, this is this big bald-faced lie. Mm-hmm. that it's. And the other big bald-faced lie is that having sailed across the South Pacific, and if you look at a map, particularly if you look at a globe, you'll see the Pacific is literally half of the globe. Okay. It is half of the globe. Yeah. And many of these islands are thousands of miles apart. Mm-hmm. In fact, the Marquesans artifacts show that the Marquesans arrived at Easter Island before the Easter Islanders. The problem is the Marquesans are 4,000 miles from Easter Island each way. Okay. How did they even find them? We know, without modern navigational equipment and charts and whatever, we would have been clueless no matter how good our navigation was. And it's beyond my comprehension that and again, you have to think, if the Polynesians' navigational skills was that good, mm-hmm. where did that come from? Exactly. They were 1,000 years ahead of the Europeans. Yeah. But to me, the having sailed across the South Pacific, but I haven't been in the North Pacific, just the South Pacific. But having sailed from Panama to Australia, you just watching the birds, watching the waves, looking at the stars, monitoring the stars is not enough. I am convinced that they used remote viewing so that they could see these islands and literally sail towards them. And again, we have remote viewing programs now, the Stargate program, where, we utilize for many, many years, we utilize psychic spies. Mm-hmm. And again, there's one remote viewer by the name of David Morehouse, who has a book called Psychic Warriors, where he talked about that he was one of the early remote viewers to go into what became known as a Stargate program. Mm-hmm. So he was recruited because of a paranormal experience he had on the battlefield. So he arrives at his new position and he asks, well, what do you do? And just nonchalantly was told, well, we go outside of time and space. Do you think these people didn't? Well, for sure. Of course. See, that can't be. That's the thing. It just, there's no, if you can see an island mm-hmm. that's 4,000 miles away, mm-hmm. then you can navigate to it. Of course. But you, again, it's like I'm convinced that back then they had acute abilities, psychic abilities that we've basically shunted down. Absolutely. Or have weaponized. We have weaponized them, mm-hmm. So they're utilized for the military. Yeah. But for the most part, most people say remote viewing, that's stupid. But mm-hmm. see, for me, that is the one way I can explain how the Marquesans not only could find mm-hmm. Easter Island 4,000 miles away, but also find their way back. Exactly. And that's all, that's all the way, so in a lot of ways, having sailed down there gives me a perspective that where I can look at the dogma and start picking it apart. Oh, another thing. Thor Heyerdahl, because he knew, having sailed down there, that first of all, you can't sail from west to east. You must sail west. But if you sail west, the trade winds and currents will take you up past Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Note the goggle eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It'll take you on up into the North Pacific to the basically the northwest coast of North America. And then you come down, to the equator, and then basically you take a big round route.
Mm-hmm.
Where you go up through Japan, up into the North Pacific. You come down along the Pacific Northwest, along the west coast of North America, mm-hmm. and then come right back home. But anyway.
So, do we have any more slides?
I've got one thing I want to add there.
Sure.
So, what do you? So there's a Native American from a Blackfoot Native American from a reservation in Montana, Blackfoot mm-hmm. Reservation. Mm-hmm. And he had his DNA tested, I think it was 2019, maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
And they discovered that his DNA is the oldest DNA in North America, as far as I know, North America. Okay. Wow. I can't remember now whether it's the U.S. or North America. Anyway, they dated it for 17,000 years old, and it came down. It said it did not come across the Bering Strait, okay. which for 17,000 years ago would have been completely covered with ice, okay. and there was no ice path coming through. That's a figment of their I guess, in order to make the Bering Strait ice barrier make sense, you had to have a place where people could come through the glaciers, and there wasn't. So they traced his DNA from Montana, from the Blackfeet Reservation, down through the west coast of the U.S., down through California, down through Mexico, down through South America, and where do you suppose it originated?
Wow.
Fatuhiva.
Wow, there you go.
Fatuhiva.
Full circle.
The same place where you find the pregnant woman
Full
these
circle.
are the kinds of things. And then, it's like, all this information comes out and it's absolutely thrown in the garbage can.
Wow.
There's no place for it.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I think it's kind of clear that, mm-hmm. Right away when you told me that this woman, Christina Thompson, was from Harvard, mm-hmm. I didn't say anything, but in my head I'm thinking, oh, God, no.
This is the official story.
Right away, the fact mm-hmm. is that they have this lady put out a book, mm-hmm. which is probably mm-hmm. full of BS. And so just the fact that it's a woman from Harvard, it's like the end all and be all. She puts out a book with very, very unimpressive information. She puts it away. She wins awards, which are obviously paid for. And then there you go. And then that's the end of it. And so that's to shut you up. Everybody else is asking questions. Shut up and just put up with the information. That's it. That's all. That's what that is. And I didn't want to jump in and say that, but when you say this was Harvard, I said, no.
There's actually a reason for that. You may not, your viewers, your attendees may not know that there's actually a dictum from on high where you don't go there. And mm-hmm. it comes from, I will just read a paragraph, but it comes from a 146-page document from John Wesley Powell for what became the Smithsonian I've got this little flipper in here. Smithsonian mm-hmm. Institute mm-hmm. called On Limitations to the Use of Some Anthropological Data. Okay. And I think this was from 1878. Now just let me read one little passage here.
Okay.
So beginning on page 73 of that publications, and I can put a link to it online because sometimes it's hard for people to find it. Okay. On page 73 of that publication is a famous essay by John Wesley Powell entitled On Limitations to the Use of Some Anthropological Data. Mm-hmm. In it, Powell sets forth the doctrine which would become the guiding principle of his Bureau of American Ethnology, which was later to become the Smithsonian. And it applies to the present day. It's a strictly isolationist doctrine which flatly declares that it is illegitimate to entertain any line of analysis and attempts to connect any artifact found in the New World with any peoples or so-called races of antiquity in any other portions of the world.
Oh.
And this, and again, it's
in your face.
It's in your face. And when I sent it to a couple of archaeologists, that, including this one who's a Marquesas, and said, "Are you aware of this?" No response. I mean, it's like you get dead space, because whether they either know this and understand that their very livelihood, their position,
exactly.
their status in their field depends on them complying to this
exactly.
to this day.
Exactly.
Which is why you can have something like the Rongo script that was found on these wooden plates in Easter Island that are identical to the Indus Valley script, which is basically where India and Pakistan come together. It's like, again, bottom of India, and they are. And I just heard this like 2 days ago, where some guy was talking about how they evolved independently because they're 6,000 miles apart and 2,000 years apart. So therefore, they cannot be the same. Well, and you go with, it doesn't matter. You can see artifacts, identical artifacts all over the world, and every single one of them are independently evolved.
Well, there you go. So
and so that is the doctrine that requires that if you want to be a professional and have status in your field, you must comply.
Yeah, you have to shut up and put up. There you go.
Shut up. That's right. So in a way, you have to look at this whole thing. This whole the issue with the Marquesas. This is just a small example of everything. I mean, it's like this is just a tiny little crack in this whole illusion of knowledge and scholarship and scientific evidence and objectiveness. All that it's all bullshit.
It is.
This is
absolutely.
I mean, it's any kind of truth in the sciences and our history. Anything.
It's BS for sure.
It's a manufactured reality.
It is actually, man. That's honestly, that's a part of the matrix.
Reality.
That's part of the matrix.
Okay.
Maurene, can we see you now? Are you? Oh, we're done. Are we done?
Yeah, we're done. Yes, that's right. And so anyway, I thought this was really apropos from George Orwell, 1984. Whoever controls the past controls the future.
There you go.
And then I'll sleeve this up. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, that is my, and then if anybody's interested in any kind of information, I probably know more about this stuff than anybody else on earth.
No, you should definitely. And you should be the one writing the book. You should be the one writing the book, and enough with this,
until I can get down there.
I know, but you know what though? Actually, somebody did ask, Maurene, can we see you? I want to see you. Actually, somebody did ask, and they said, they said, I think it's from Ingrid. She says, Ingrid Navarre, she says, you have amazing photos, but they were wondering, why were you told not to go back down to the, is that a warning?
First of all, I consulted a longtime friend who's a shaman, and she said, I just turned 76 for one thing, and I did have a health emergency when I flew, about a year and a half ago, just flying from Seattle to Cincinnati to go to a conference, and developed embolisms in my lungs.
Oh.
So, yeah, so it's a matter of, do I dare fly 12, 14 hours?
Okay, yeah.
And so there's definitely a health risk.
Okay.
So, but if I could find, I've already been down there. As much as I'd like to go down there again. Oh, and she said just ground travel only.
Okay.
So it's like I can't
find yourself a 40-foot boat and get back out there.
Yeah, well, I have thought about that. So anyway, if I would love to be able to find somebody, who's who's a really good photographer, videographer, who could go down there and do this for me. I mean, I would be willing to finance it because otherwise I would be financing myself. So if I could get some,
all right. Well, people, the message is out there.
And I can provide all, and then I can provide all the research.
Well, there you go.
Information, if I could get somebody to go down there physically, and go to the museums, talk to the locals, find out. The important thing is to find out where they were all sited originally.
Exactly.
Because a lot of them, I think, there's the fact that say going back to Hiva Oa, where you had Taki, the ancient guy. just next to the dude who's flying,
Yeah.
and Uncle George with the helmet and the spectacles. I mean, they're totally incongruous. They don't belong there.
Well, you know what? We can all our members, if you're watching,
Yeah,
the word is out. So if you're interested in
that's
going
right.
down to the South Pacific,
I'm looking for help because I have 20 years worth of research behind me. I've been there before, so I am physically oriented with the space, everything. So that is why it was my friend Wanda the Shaman just said it's too risky for me to do it.
Okay, I understand.
But anyway, just to let everybody know that.
Perfect.
Yes,
well, Maureen,
I'm definitely on the lookout.
So let's get you back on screen, Maureen.
Yeah,
and
I would love to answer some questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a subject. Oh, by the way, you guys, I am currently working on. This is a presentation I gave last year at the Ocean Shores UFO Summit, Ocean Shores, Washington, which is our big regional UFO summit, and it's like 600 people, so it's a big deal. I get invited every year. I come up with shit like that.
Okay, fair enough.
So this year, and it's like May 2nd and 3rd.
Okay.
So this year, I'm going to do one on the ancient goddesses, the reimagining UFOs in the age of Aquarius, and they're showing this whole thing where all of this stuff goes back to the ancient goddesses 40,000 years ago. So this is going to be really cool because, I mean, the more information, God, I've been getting so much.
Yeah, well, you have to give us some links, and we'll put it down in the description below.
These are
yeah. That's great.
I get so excited doing the research on this. So anyway, if you guys are interested, come say mid-April or so.
Sure.
I would love to be able to do a presentation where I can do, I always like to give the presentation to smaller groups ahead of time to be critiqued.
Absolutely. We'll have you back.
Rather than making mistakes or being unclear or whatever in front of 600 people.
No worries. We'll have you back.
It'll all be about the connection between UFOs today and the ancient goddesses.
Oh, that's perfect. So people, be on the lookout. We're going to be having that presentation. So Maureen, did you want to stop sharing your screen and then we can get you back and then we can also look at some questions?
Well, if I can just figure stop share.
Okay. There you go. There you go. So I had an interesting comment from Darius Klein. He says the pre-contact Polynesians had a navigational method they used called moving islands. It can't be described in detail, but they did indeed have very sophisticated navigational techniques. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that, though.
Yeah. Oh, there's no question they did. But I also know, 4,000 miles between islands. I mean, the big question, where did they get navigational skills in the first place 1,000 years more advanced than the Europeans? I mean, it didn't come out of nowhere.
No.
And again, no matter how sophisticated their navigation was, it only makes sense. If we have remote viewing today, basically we have weaponized as psychic spies. Do you think they didn't have psychic abilities, probably to a much greater ability than we have, because we've largely suppressed it? So,
but also, I'm kind of wondering, and I have two questions here. At the same time, don't forget that these populations are older, and so they've had a chance to explore the areas that they're in. Could it be also that it shows the fact that they are much older civilizations and that they've passed down old, for example, navigating by the stars, old star charts,
where would they have gotten that knowledge from?
Yeah,
Lemuria.
So that was my second question. So that's my second question. So I know of Lemuria, and I know that some people know.
The thing with Lemuria is that again, 200 cultures around the world have these stories about how they are the survivors of a advanced matrilingual advanced civilization that was in the somewhere in the South Pacific, that was lost to a natural catastrophe, like meteors coming down and then followed by a great deluge, by like a huge tsunami. So you have to think, these stories, and now this is the weird thing, they also have, and this is in the Bible, they also have these stories about how this deluge went to the top of the mountains. Yeah. I mean, the Nepalese, to the top of the Himalayas. You know, how could, there's no way you could have had a deluge within human memory that went to the top of the mountains. So you have to wonder, where do those memories come from? Are they embedded from possibly, you know, a million years ago? Are these refugees from Mars?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to, because they all have basically the same memory of this great, not only of, and it could be that Lemuria, again, goes back 10,000, or not 10,000 years, you know, but a million years. I mean, it could be an entirely different thing altogether than a lost continent in the middle of the South Pacific. But it's this thing about the floods. You know, here in Washington State, I don't know if you ever heard of the channeled Scablands.
No.
But Eastern Washington is incredible. It's like a Grand Canyon in a way, in that 18,000 years ago, a glacial lake in Montana, glacial Lake Missoula, let loose. And basically, like a Lake Michigan amount of water, drained in 24 hours into Washington State and left this surreal, carved out, scoured landscape. So 18,000 years later, it's still exactly the same.
Okay.
So if you had a great deluge that went to the mountaintops, it might take a million years. It might take for the, you know, for everything to kind of erode down, for plants to replant, whatever. It's way outside the time span of human memory. So where do these memories come from?
Yeah. But I mean,
Where do they come from?
Yeah, but let me sort of, you know, wind that back a bit, because I know that not everybody, I mean, we take for granted that we know about Lemuria. Can you just give people just a short background on Lemuria? Because if I say the word Atlantis, people know about Atlantis back and front.
Oh, see, Lemuria.
So let's talk about what Lemuria is and what Lemuria is in comparison with Atlantis, and because I'll have they have a tendency to have sort of like a compare and contrast. But tell us about what's specific about Lemuria compared to Atlantis.
Well, first of all, Lemuria was the mother culture. Atlantis was the satellite.
Okay.
And the big difference, and Lemuria would have been located, according to, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the Hopis or, I mean, who it is. They all kind of point to this, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a continent. It could be a series of islands, because you have to remember that 12,000 years ago, the oceans were, because of the glaciers, the oceans were 400 feet lower than they are now. And then after the glaciers melted, the oceans filled up. So, but 400 feet still isn't enough to cause the inundation that these memories are talking about. But so anyway, there's, according to these global memories, there was an advanced civilization located somewhere in the Pacific that was the mother culture, and they were, not only was it a feminine culture, but they were spiritual. They advanced in the direction of spirituality, whereas the Atlanteans are basically duplicates of what we are.
Okay.
Very technologically advanced warriors, empire builders. They're the very patriarchal mindset.
Okay.
Whereas the Lemurians, it went exactly in the opposite direction, and it's even debatable whether they had fully. You know, if you consult like Edgar Casey, it's debatable if they even had hard physical form, if they were, or were they light beings?
Okay.
Yeah, so it was exactly they would have coexisted about the same time. They could very well have been obliterated at the same time, but they're polar opposites in that Lemuria went in the direction of advanced spirituality, and Atlantis went in the direction of advanced technology misused.
Yeah, exactly. And they blew themselves up. So if that's the case, then, you know, one thing I actually wanted to bring up as well, and I'm not sure if people are fully aware of this, but there is these statues in South America, and I forget where, I think it might be in parts of Peru. I can't remember.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Well, they're everywhere, but they are called the. They have they look like African.
Oh, that would be in Mexico. That would be the.
I know what it is, but it's. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly. The word will come to me in a second.
Yeah, but they have these helmets, and they have a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
And they seem to also be very old, and it's hard again to tell how old they are, because a lot of the moss and the lichen and all that kind of stuff has been cleaned off, but they seem to have also, looks like they may have also come and explored, America long before the Europeans, long before anybody else. And
there are suggestions that they may have represented refugees from Atlantis.
oh, really? But they had,
Yes.
even though they had African features, I mean,
Well,
because it's very clear.
They had all sorts of. They had like Asian features, like Chinese features. They had across the board. A little bit of trivia. Do you know who discovered those?
No.
That whole God. It's not. It's What is it? The word just escaped me. Neil Armstrong aboard the space shuttle.
Really?
Saw them. What he saw was very suspicious, protrusions in the ground. And he led an archaeological study when he got back, because he was sure that there was something there. So, yeah, one of our astronauts actually found that.
Oh, okay, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's so many things of our past, which again is, and then one of the things that I have to wonder about is, and why do you keep finding all of these repeated motifs? Why did people, the ancients, first of all, carve people? I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're a Celt in Scotland, or whether you were in Greece, whether you were in, the Middle East, Sumeria, or the Indus Valley, or India, or, China, Japan. I mean, all around the world. What is this? Do we have a gene in there, some kind of embedded mem about carving figures in stone? I mean, let alone, things like dolmens. Those they're like these three. They have three upright feet with a top on them. I mean, some of these. I mean, there's like 100,000 of them.
Yeah.
There's 30,000 of them in Korea alone, South Korea, and some of them have these tops that are like 250 tons. And again, it's like, they're barrier. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
It's like anything that can't be explained.
Yeah, they just sort of throw any kind of term.
And they're also in Montana. The biggest dolmens in the world are 80 foot tall in Montana.
The name,
you have all of these common motifs. Like, why? There had to be some kind of global culture.
Absolutely. But I mean, that's very clear. And I think that people like, Graham Hancock and a whole bunch of them are coming to terms with the fact that we definitely had a global culture. That's clear. The name I wanted to come up with was the Olmec. The Olmec.
Olmecs.
And they had these big heads.
Absolutely right. Yeah,
that are carved throughout New Mexico.
They had features from like almost every kind of race.
But that's kind of interesting, because everybody wants to sort of, like, similar to what we were talking about how Thor Heyerdahl and other people were saying, well, the Polynesians could not have done all this because, they can't, obviously supersede the Europeans and all that. But it's interesting that the Olmec heads, even though they may represent different groups, the fact is they're representing groups from different parts of the world with different physical features. So that means that, people from all over the planet were circumventing the globe. We're traveling around. And to say that, okay, and I'm taking a card out here and saying, well, okay, you have some different African cultures that maybe were a little less evolved, but you had a lot of other African cultures that had kingdoms, and they were evolved, and they were sailing around. So, this is to say that it's not just Europeans, but it's also the fact that many different groups from different parts of the world had a connection with each other. And in certain parts, and there's a certain structure. Again, I'm too tired to figure this out, but there was a structure. I think it might be Tiahuanaco, I think, where they have the different heads in the wall, and they have different features, and different people from different parts of the world featured in the wall and these carvings. And so they're saying that, well, of course, all these other people were there. And so we are definitely missing a piece of the puzzle here, because if all these people from South America are talking about Africans, or talking about people from Asia,
Yeah.
And they're talking about them coming here, and they're showing actual, carvings of them. And you don't just carve the first person you see. Like me, if you keep having people coming in, you're going to carve them after a while. So that means that definitely something was going on. And I think
there were common ways of looking at the world. And again, I think for the most part, what I see is, again, we live in this manufactured reality where so many things, and again, it could have a lot to do with the fact that basically archaeology, anthropology, history can't undermine the biblical story.
Well, that you have to thank
the whole thing here is you cannot undermine the Bible story.
Yeah, but you have to thank the 19th century for that, for like the Victorians. You have to thank them for that, because they could not some.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But there's so many things that are one of your I think maybe it was Darius. By the way, my great-great-grandfather's name was Darius.
Oh, there you go.
But anyway, there are these repeated memes of the lizard people. What I call the reptoids.
Yeah, Darius made that comment about the lizard people.
You find them in Greece. You find them in Crete. You find them in Romania. You find them in Sumeria. You find them in the Indus Valley. You find them in China, Japan. I mean, you find them all, and in many cases, they're literally identical. There are these figurines, particularly the mother figurines. They're identical figurines that come from Greece that are found in Mexico. So there's this, and again, we're being told, well, these things just happen. It magically happens. But particularly the thing with the reptilian or reptoid figurines, and this is something I'm going to get into in this talk I'm going to be doing for in May for Ocean Shores. But why do you have all of these distinctly reptilian looking people? They not only have reptilian features, they have scales, they have these weird body builds, and the mothers will have little, basically baby reptoids. So it's not like it's something, they're deformed, but again, you find them everywhere. And you have to wonder, and they're sort of like just brushed off as well. There was this reference for snakes or whatever. I say bullshit. There's something more to it. At one point did we actually coexist?
But absolutely. But I mean also
species.
Absolutely. But I mean, the thing is that first of all, the idea of cradling a baby snake makes no sense. That's stupid. That's one. Number two, I know that it was about a couple of 2-3 years ago, that someone like Jaime Maussan, who was on Gaia, was talking about a discovery that they think they made in Mexico, where they found those ancient mummies that seem to be part human and also part reptilian, if you will, and they found, and they were doing a lot of DNA study, and it was a study being led in I think it was in Mexico, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong, and they basically found that they were basically half human and half otherworldly, as it were. And it's not the first time. So I think that when you do see someone cradling what looks like, they said lizard, but it could also be, if it's half, let's say it's a hybrid, just a gray alien
they
hybrid.
have human bodies,
but the thing is, the eyes are going to be, because it looks reptilian, because reptilians do have a certain kind of eye shape. But if that baby is half of a hybrid of gray, that baby is going to look different with the different eyes, and you're still going to have the baby.
The babies always look like the mother.
Yeah.
Same features. But again, you just have to think, now, why, when you see this all over the world, why would somebody, say in Greece, come up with the identical weird reptoid figurine as they would in the Indus Valley, 8,000 miles away?
Exactly.
And again, you have to think many of these things date back to just after the ice ages. I mean, the weather had to be horrific. You did not travel back then.
Yeah.
The weather had to be wild. And again, the other thing is that again, you just have to think there's so much more to the story than we're being allowed to even, it's even consider.
Absolutely.
It's like it's off the board. So unless you're an independent researcher who will be scorned, but if you don't require the credentials, if you don't require their grant money, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So you speak to the public instead of your fellow academics.
Well, that's what happened with, it started with Eric von Daniken, but ever since then, it's gone all the way through. And I find what I like, for example, with someone like Graham Hancock, is that he's not only just sort of, projecting and saying, well, maybe this, maybe that. He's actually using very distinct science, and he's looking at the archaeology, and he's saying, okay, but based on this cannot happen, because you just have to use common sense, and you just have to do the math. I said, it's not working. So someone like Graham Hancock, who's recently had a show on Netflix about the Great Deluge and how the different cultures were affected by it. He's looking at all the science and coming up with very, very hard facts. So it's getting to a point now where we can't, you can't just have someone from Harvard write some stupid book and say, well, there you go, that's it, and then we're just going to put it down. No way. So, we are getting to a point where I think people are beginning to ask questions. People are beginning to sort of poke their head out and say, you know what, the same old stories is not going to do. And people see this, and people have been traveling, and they're saying, you know what, this is not making sense for me anymore. I really can't have this because it's not making sense for me. And this is not what I see. And like I said before, when we were talking, a lot of people who have been doing their studies are saying, well, look, the evidence is different. Yeah. I'm an archaeologist or I'm an anthropologist, and this is not what the evidence is pointing to. So we need to look at this from a different perspective. We need a different story. We need a new story. Yeah.
Well, I would say with Graham Hancock, what I would say I have reservations with is he doesn't go far enough.
Okay.
He's very much into, that it's all human technology. It's like there were advanced human cultures back then that were able to produce advanced technological. They had advanced technology where they could build these extraordinary buildings, whatever. But it doesn't take into account, I would say, the starseed aspect of it. The stories of all the goddesses all came from the stars. Every indigenous culture they're basically they are star seed. It's like he's in a way, but he gets attacked. It's like he gets attacked for even holding it down. I mean, just keeping it within what should be like acceptable areas, and even he is slammed. If he were to go into something like, say, for example, one example, except two examples in the South Pacific, on the island Tonga. Which, by the way, is so small that I could walk across it in one day.
Okay.
It's the main island. Anyway, there are these extraordinary megaliths there, these huge platforms, with stones that are 20 feet long. It's like Baalbek, 20 feet long, 10 feet high, 6 feet. That must have weighed tons and tons and tons. There is this, and then there's this big ocean-going harbor, dock area. Where you could bring an ancient ocean-going fleets in there. There's a big canal system. That's like 20 feet wide and 10 feet deep. It's extraordinary. But what's really extraordinary is there's this like big gate, like the Gate of the Sun in Tiwanaku.
Okay.
What they have there, and it's estimated that the two side, it's huge. The two side pieces, so it's like this. The two side pieces are probably 20 tons each. The piece that goes across the top did not come from Tonga. The closest place where that particular stone comes from is like Malden Island, 600 miles away. There, the Tongans say, oh, well, Lord Maui flew it over.
Oh, there you go.
Because I can tell you, you You could not, in those boats that they had, you could not transport this huge stone, particularly going against the wind.
Yeah, exactly. But just to sort of add to that, just added sort of 2 cents to that, people have been asked, they've asked people who are machinists, people who, do the big rigs and all that kinds of, all this sort of like, and who work in mining and all that. And they say, would you be able to move some of these stones from Baalbek? Would you be able to move some of these big, fat blocks? And they're saying, no, we can't. It is even with some of the biggest cranes they have going, with the big fat ass cranes, they said we cannot move some of these stones. And Baalbek, oublie ça, like there's no way, forget about it.
And there are even bigger
yet
ones
somehow, I know, and so somehow by stone tools and maybe a couple of copper tools, they were able to cut, shape, and place.
And
without being able to put a paper in there,
place on top,
and to place stuff on top, and then somehow magically they're starting to pull us out of the air, and okay, no. So if even us today with stuff, we are landing probes on Mars, and yet we cannot move these big fat blocks. So you tell me, I don't know.
Well, it's 1,000 slaves with ropes and logs.
Yeah, no, that's been written out. That's stupid. That's Hollywood.
That's right. But that's what the story is. It's still 1,000 slaves with ropes.
And they've actually done that. They actually had a Japanese crew, I think back in the early 80s or something like that. They tried to do that whole thing where they tried to move, people and the ropes and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, no, it's not working.
That's right.
No.
So anyway, like these statues down in the Marquesas are just like one example. And see, nobody talks about it. It's only because I was there 40 years ago and I saw them, at least some of them. I touched them. I know physically they're there. So that is the only reason that I wouldn't even believe they existed.
Yeah.
If I hadn't physically seen them myself.
Okay.
So yeah, it's and it really disheartens me at how dumbed down we've become, and one of the things that I'm really concerned about is how many people, particularly the professionals, they seem to have no curiosity, and it's not just curiosity, but it goes beyond that. It's an analytical thinking. So when I send that image of, say, the flying dude in the Marquesas with the big goggle eyes with a duplicate for Japan, and I get back from a noted retired professor and Marquesanist, well, you just see those everywhere, and conversations drop. It's like, you'd have to think, it's like, why isn't she saying, I didn't notice that? And then if she didn't, why didn't she? It's like there's been a complete shutdown in what I would consider to be curiosity and follow-up and analysis. Sometimes I wonder if fluoride has been put in the water basically to, in a lot of cases, lobotomize people's minds.
Yeah, really.
Because, what happened to curiosity? Why am I looking into these things?
Well, what's unfortunate is that, look, it's not to say that all young people or all Gen Z are just looking at their cell phones. But I think that we've gotten to a point where people are just not thinking. We don't have the same kind of critical thinking that we used to way back when. So unfortunately, that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. I'm not going to go there.
That would be another one.
But I think that
it is curious that the mainstream archaeologists basically want nothing to do with those statues because they don't fit in with the dogma.
But they also don't pay.
If they fit in the dogma,
they also don't pay.
You get rid of the evidence, you maintain the dogma.
Exactly. So, I just there to get not every single person, but I definitely feel that the age of really being curious kind of flew out the window at some point. But there are still some people who are curious. Maybe not as much as before, but
yes, there are. But they
there's
don't seem to
some
be in
people.
academia.
But they're maybe not with academia, but the average person such as yourself, who you definitely have a curiosity and see something in this, definitely has to be pursued. But so just moving along. So in terms of Lemuria, apart from the statues, would you say there are other elements of Lemuria that we can find evidence of? Because we don't really hear much about Lemuria, to be honest.
There is the interesting thing is, it's not only do you have the mythology that's
Okay.
global, but also you have names, the words. You have the same words that include the MU all over the world. You have mythology, the same kind of mythology around the world. And again, there's so many, what would you say? There's so many pieces that again, like having this word Lemuria repeated around the world in reference to a lost continent. It's like how do you dismiss that? And I guess it's the same thing with the Great Flood. How do you dismiss that when 200 cultures all have this same story, even though you might be talking about somebody in Vanuatu versus somebody in Lapland, or somebody in the Marquesas versus somebody in South Korea. How do you? Yeah, there are too many above and beyond the common artifacts found. It's just there seem to be too many pieces of the puzzle that point to that this one way or another was a real place.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah, and it's
Okay. Well,
when you can't find a physical place for it to have been.
Mhm.
Although there was that new continent, what they call Zealandia, in the middle of the. Now this is interesting too, because the oceanographers discovered a new continent, a submerged continent in the middle of the South Pacific. They call it Zealandia, and it's like 2,000 feet deep. But the fact is that sonar investigations along the coast of Chile and along the coast of Cuba have revealed ancient ruins that are deeper than that.
Wow.
So, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, there's like this whole huge city off of the southwest coast of Cuba. But yeah, it's very possible that this Zealandia was actually one time was the Lemuria. It also could be that when the oceans rose, that what we have are the remnants in Hawaii, the Marquesas, Tahiti, all of the mountainous islands. So.
Mm-hmm. So basically, usually and I know you mentioned that there was a definite difference between the Atlantis story and the Lemuria story. Now the thing is with Atlantis is that a lot of people say, well, Atlantis might have been here in the middle of the ocean, and we might, it might actually be the island of Ireland, or it might be off the coast of Bahamas and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people have said that there may be traces of Atlantis, definitely off the coast of the Bahamas, which is what the Edgar Cayce had talked about.
Right.
And he said that parts of Atlantis would come up in 1968 off the island of Bimini. So there's that. Is there any kind of something similar with Lemuria, where there might have been pieces of Lemuria or something?
Well, other than the fact that again, whether it doesn't matter whether it's Hawaii, the Marquesas, Tahiti, New Zealand, they all have stories that come back to being again the reality of this Lemuria. Mm-hmm. So it's possible that again with some kind of flood, what you're seeing is the submerged or the remaining mountaintops from what would have been a submerged continent. But yeah, and again Atlantis. It's I've sailed over the Bahama Banks, and we had a centerboarders, so it had a shallow draft.
Okay.
But I could see worms crawling along the bottom. It is so shallow. There's this huge area called the Bahama Banks, which is only about 10 feet deep. And it goes for like dozens of miles, 50, 60 miles. Well, again, it wasn't very long ago that was above water. And then you have, again, this huge submerged city off the west coast of Cuba. That's not very far from the Bahamas.
Okay.
And you see, cities, streets, pyramids. I mean, clearly, anybody can look it up. A submerged city off of the southwest coast or just off the coast of Cuba.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, so there's actually quite a lot of evidence, and they could be outliers. There could have been some main center that disappeared. I mean, that the main center, but lots of outlier like colonies around. And I would not be at all surprised if Antarctica
Okay.
doesn't have something there as well.
Oh, for sure. Because I mean, when the planet, it seems that when the planet tilted on its axis, south, the continent of Antarctica was actually more in a temperate climate, and then when it tilted, it just like flash froze, and it went into that portion of the world. So there's a lot of talk about how that might have. That's probably what happened, but.
There's no doubt in my mind that something's going on down there. Just what is going on down there is the big question.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I tell you, when Buzz Aldrin, an astronaut, went down there, when there was that whole slew of people going down, I think John Kerry went down. I think one of the royals went down. I think it was like one of the heads of the Russian Orthodox Church. I mean, a whole bunch of them, including him. And he had to be airlifted off. And he remarked on the plane that in a state of panic. In a state of physical distress, saying that he had seen the face of evil.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So you have to wonder, were the Nazis down there? Is this someplace that the Nazis took over? There's really, and if anybody wants to look into something interesting, look into Operation High Jump.
Yeah, exactly, with Admiral Byrd.
Something routed Admiral Byrd and his fleet away from there.
Exactly, got chased out.
Chased out, that's right. So it's Atlantis is I think there's a lot of reasons. Atlantis is, again, I think there's something like 2,000 books written on Atlantis, and there might be 100 written on Lemuria. It seems to be something that people are intrigued with because it's part of like that whole Western civilization, that whole European civilization. It's kind of like I would equate it with in a lot of ways that everybody knows about Vesuvius, and Pompeii, about how in 79 A.D. Vesuvius erupted and basically buried Pompeii and
Herculaneum.
Herculaneum, that's right. Well, how many people, that was almost 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
How many people know what happened to Saint Pierre on Martinique in the West Indies at 1902?
Not many.
Mount Pelee erupted. A pyroclastic flow came down and killed all 30,000 people in 5 minutes. The whole town was buried in 5 minutes. That was just a little over 100 years ago, and nobody knows about it because who the hell wants to know about West Indians?
Exactly.
There's so much bias towards Rome and Greece and the European side. It's like, I bet your listeners, I bet none of them know about Saint Pierre being covered with by a pyroclastic flow just a little over 100 years ago. 30,000 people died in 5 minutes.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the height of the at the age of all the archaeologists and all that stuff that was coming around in the time of the latter half of the 19th century. That was very European, so there's no surprises there. I do have some comments here. I have a comment from Chris, and Chris says the Taiwan the Taiwan area, since the indigenous people have some linguistic and genetic commonalities with Proto-Polynesian ancestors. Do you know anything? Like, did you want to comment on that?
Well, but it makes sense because remember, if you can have Marquesan DNA in Blackfoot Indians in Montana, how'd they get there?
Yeah.
They would have sailed west, up past Japan, probably up past Taiwan, up and around that big circle loop where they could go just like that. So it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And then also you have to look at the all the carvings and all the motifs that are found in the Pacific Northwest, which are damn near identical to those in the Southwest in the Polynesian culture.
Okay.
Well, how did it get there? Most likely it was brought up from the Polynesians and on that big circle route.
I have another comment again from Darius. He says that Darius Klein, he says, island Southeast Asia used to be attached to the mainland via Sundaland and Wallacea. Much of that land is now submerged. Do you want to copy on?
Well, also, there's not only Lemuria, but the Indians have a story about, again, their version of Lemuria, which was basically located off of south of India in the Indian Ocean, and it was a continent-sized, land, and they believe, again, this was the equivalent. This is where they believe that Lemuria was at. So they have this hard and fast belief in their own Lemuria. And I think I'm trying to remember Kundaland, or I can't remember the exact name of it right now, but
He said Sundaland. Maybe that was
no, Sundaland is like Indonesia and Malaysia. That's over there.
Okay.
But I think Sundaland is, again, that's separate from what the Indians basically equated to their own version of Lemuria.
Okay.
And I just don't have the name is escaping me right now.
Okay. Well, I think that I think when I look at this kind of situation, I think it's clear that we are looking at ancient, whether we're looking at the stones in South Pacific or, like you said, all around the world. I think that we're really sort of coming down to it when we look at our ancient history. I think that it's not just enough to sort of say, well, humans evolved from monkeys and all this kind of stuff, and maybe they did, and I know there's a certain amount of science that backs that up. However, I think there's a lot more going on about who we are and about how our actual DNA and our actual makeup is very different from what the history books have told us. And I think, if anything, if I'm going to draw anything from all of this, is that it's definitely a situation where we have to look back at our own
we have to
origins.
Deconstruct
it, yeah.
Deconstruct,
yeah.
Reimagine our ancient history, because what we've got is a tall tale.
Yeah.
A manufactured reality.
Absolutely. Wow. We went around the world tonight, didn't we? I think we really uncovered a lot of stones, no pun intended. I think we turned over a lot of stones, and I feel that
literally tripped over a lot of stones.
Literally tripped over a lot of stones, especially you did. And I think that definitely putting out the call again to anybody who's interested in going down to the South Pacific, hit up Maurene, let her know.
If you are a skilled photographer or videographer, whatever. Again, since I have been warned off going down there, but it has to be done. It's like I am stopped dead in the water. I can't publish any books. I can do what I did today. I can do local, regional conferences or whatever with the disclaimer. But there's so many things I can't do without my own material, and then to the right material.
Okay.
That's from every view. Every time of day, every filter. And then finding out, most of all, where they were originally sighted.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure that, the more anomalous the sites become, the more I'm convinced, again, this is basically a place of refuge for someone's most precious icons.
Okay. Wow.
Artifacts.
So I wanted to just say to everybody, I really appreciate Maurene for coming down tonight and for giving us this presentation. And to show your appreciation, I'm going to ask you to please like and subscribe, and to give this presentation a thumbs up. It helps us to grow, and it helps us to invite even more guests as prominent as Maurene to the show. So please like and subscribe and give us a thumbs up. And I just wanted to say...
And if you would like to have me come back in mid-April
absolutely.
To do it, so you guys can critique
my
presentation on the ancient god, on the goddesses.
Yeah.
The long-forgotten goddesses.
Absolutely.
In fact, if I could take 2 minutes here to share a story that I just learned, like in the last 2 days. I've started to look up all this information basically on the lost goddesses, where the ones that basically have been shunted aside, Hathor, Astarte, Athena, on and on and on and on and on. So anyway, I had to stumble onto this story about the Black Madonna of Poland, and her being connected to the miracle of the fistula. First of all, the black Madonna of Warsaw. I'm not sure whether it's Poland or probably Poland. She became first of note when she basically saved the Poles from defeat in 1717. So she has a history that goes way back.
Okay.
And she's referred to as the Black Madonna because so many people have brought candles in to lighting the candles that the soot has blackened her face. Okay. So anyway, I started looking into this Black Madonna, and I discovered that there is a reason why we are not basically communists to this day. Europe, US, why we are not all communists today.
Okay.
And it gets back to this extraordinary story, which has been totally suppressed, about how after in 1920, after the end of the of World War I, and after Lenin and the Bolsheviks basically took over Russia, and they were hell-bent on spreading communism. Just feverishly intent on spreading communism around the world. And so Lenin got 100,000 troops. And again, these were troops that were battle-worn. These were troops, they were feverish about spreading this new gospel. So anyway, they come in and they invade into the eastern part of Poland and advance to where they're entering into Warsaw, and the ragtag Poles. It was absolutely guaranteed defeat. They reached out to the Brits, and the Brits said, "Hey, it's your fate. Surrender." And they refused to do it, and they all started to pray to this Black Madonna.
Oh.
They prostrated themselves, praying to this Black Madonna. So anyway, the next day, the 100,000 Russian troops are coming into Warsaw, and they have these ragtag Poles that are that's going at them, and all of a sudden, above the Polish army, this goddess appeared on a cloud. So the Poles did not see her, but the Russians did. This was a Madonna riding on a cloud with a sword and a shield. All the troops, Russian troops, saw her. They were so terrified, they literally threw down their arms and ran. So when the Poles started going after the Russians, they weren't there. They were literally hiding in villages, hiding in dog kennels, anywhere they could go. They were terrified by this figure of this woman on top of a cloud with a sword and a shield.
Now, was she black?
And pardon?
Was she black? The Black Madonna.
Well, no. See, the original black. It was she wasn't black, but see, she was called the figure.
Okay.
In the churches where it was called Black Madonna
because of the soot. Okay, I understand.
So anyway, her appearance basically staved off the onslaught of communism, and they were like hell bent on basically evangelizing the world. And so again, and it's a story but the biggest suppressor, and then the original person in the 1717 who had basically enabled the Poles to not be, to withstand an assault. She was finally in 2020 canonized. I think it was Pope John II or Pope Paul II. I can't remember which one. And it's like, not only was the story in 1920 suppressed, but her canonization was suppressed. It's like, I got on a number of sites, Catholic sites, they talk all about the battle, but no mention of her.
Okay.
It's like she has been erased from history.
And this battle took place in 1920? Just to be clear?
1920.
Okay.
And she was canonized in 2020, basically
100 years later. Okay.
And she was literally erased from history, probably because you don't want a woman out there, basically, leading the troops.
Yeah. Well, definitely not on a cloud. That's for sure. A cloud and holding
she was
shield.
up there again with sword and a shield. And again, the Russian troops, 100,000, and it was a massacre. The Poles went after them and massacred them. And again, this is a story that you never hear. You sure the hell don't hear about the part that this Madonna or this goddess had. So yeah, I mean, this is the kind of, so there's like 40,000 years of goddess history that's been largely suppressed.
Okay.
And I really want to kind of delve into that. So if you guys are interested, I would love to have you do some critiquing before I get in front of 600 people.
Absolutely. Well, we'll definitely have to have you back, Maurene. It's always a pleasure to have you. And this topic tonight was very, very interesting because we don't really hear much about this part of the world. We hear, like you said, usually about like Europe and the Mediterranean and South America, that sort of thing. But we never really hear much about the South Pacific. So it's really nice to sort of shed a bit of light on that and to sort of also to bring them into the family, into the fold, because we always talk about, okay, there's alien, contact here. There's different kinds of, contact here with different civilizations, but the South Pacific is always sort of shunted off on its own, unless of course you're talking about Easter Island, and we've heard a lot about Easter Island, but not about other islands in the South Pacific, especially in
all the focus is on Easter Island as far as these megaliths are concerned.
Exactly. Well, we definitely have to look forward to seeing, hopefully, going down and taking some pictures. And, putting some more meat on the bones with that story. So I just wanted to say thank you again, Maurene, for coming down and for being with us. It was absolute pleasure for you to come with us tonight and to sort of explore this topic. And we'll put more information in the into the description below, and we can pass on that information for Maurene to our viewers. And so if anybody has any questions, let us know. You can always contact Maurene. We have your email information down below. So
I'll make sure I send the information about the Powell Doctrine.
Okay.
That I read to you. Because
absolutely.
Again, everybody, to believe me, you just have to bring it up yourself and look at it. And it's readily online.
Okay.
So,
perfect. Well, I just want to say thank you again, Maurene. It's always a pleasure.
Well, thank you.
And I want to say
it's such a pleasure to get away from the UFO crowd.
I know.
And then say with the star seed and the light workers, yet to get away from, because it's so dogmatic.
Exactly.
It's largely nuts and bolts, and you dare not go out of that.
Exactly.
So it's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, it's always, like I said, it's always good to sort of see things from a different perspective, and that's definitely what we did tonight. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you to all our viewers for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.
Maybe in April, I'll be ready to float it by you guys.
Absolutely.
Asking for critiques.
For sure. Absolutely. Thanks again, Maurene.
Okay. Well, good night to you, and thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for being with us. Thank you, Maurene. Take care. And take care, everybody.